Welcome into the Cool Grandpa Podcast. I'm excited to have you here, and I'm excited to have a chance for our monthly one-on-one discussion. I'm going to be talking about adventures and the need for adventures with our grandchildren, as well as the need for adventures with ourselves. So you're really going to enjoy this conversation. Before we get started, I want to remind you that my book, My Grandpa's Grandpa, is now available for purchase. You can go to my website, cool-grandpa.us, and you can order the book from that site. You can also go to Amazon to be able to order the hardback as well as to order the Kindle version of this book. The feedback I've had from adults has been nice. The thing that really I enjoy is getting the feedback from the kids. And so the kids that have been reading this book has been positive, and they've enjoyed the storyline quite a bit. So I'm sure that you and your grandchildren are going to enjoy this as well. So please go ahead and go to, like I said, go to my website or go to Amazon and you can purchase the book there. I will also be teaching a course this May through Grandparents Academy on being an intentional grandfather. Now, this isn't a course where I'm going to beat you over the head and shoulders and tell you everything that you're doing wrong. No, that's not the purpose at all. It's to be able to inspire you to stay active in this role of being a grandfather, and also to make sure that you know that you have a choice on how intentional you want to be with your relationship with your adult children and your grandchildren. So what we plan to do is be able to share a bunch of nuggets of information, and what I expect is that you'll be able to pick and choose what's applicable to you and your situation, and then be able to add those nuggets into, let's say, your grandpa toolkit. That's the purpose of the course, and I hope you go to my website, and you can find the links in the affiliate section as well as in the show notes for this episode. And you can sign up for the course using those links, as well as be able to see what other courses are available for grandparents through Grandparents Academy. So, without further ado, let's jump into this conversation. Hello, and welcome to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. This is your host, Greg Payne, coming at you from Studio 12. This podcast is about being the best possible grandpa you can be, focusing on what it is to be a grandpa and how we can all share that experience together for our grandchildren. I want you to make 2023 a year of adventure. And I want you to make year of 2023 a year of adventure for both yourself and for your grandchildren. Now, why do I want to make this year a year of adventure? Is because adventures and the experiences are what we tend to remember most. Even as we get older, our memories around these events shift a little bit. They become more positive than maybe what the experience really was. But they're the memories that really hold on to us, much more than just an item that Grandpa always used to use. You know, here's the fountain pen that Grandpa always used to use. Here's the toolbox that he always had. Those can elicit strong memories for sure. But the memories of having an adventure with your grandfather is something that adult children are going to remember well into their middle adult years. And why do I say that? Because when I talk to adult grandchildren, they're always telling me of adventures that they had with their grandfathers when they were 8 years old, 10 years old, 14 years old. Those adventures and those memories are what really build a strong connection, even after the grandfather may have passed on. The other thing that adventures do for us is that it helps to keep us young. It helps to keep us moving because we want to be active in these adventures. We don't want to just be passive with them. So it's important for us to have these goals of activities that we want to do so that as we go through rehabs, like I'm going through rehab for my back, I've got an idea that I want to be able to go out and go hiking with my grandkids. I want to be able to go out and do fun activities, maybe even go water skiing again. whatever that activity is, that's a strong reason for you to pay attention for your physical therapy. It's a strong why for why do you want to remain healthy and moving and vibrant. It's important for us to have this idea of adventures in our heads for multiple different reasons. The other part of this too that I want to be able to share with you is it's important, as much as we focus on adventures with you and the grandchildren, I want to make sure that you focus on adventures for you. Now, adventures for you will obviously be different from adventures with the grandchildren, but adventures for you are going to be able to help stimulate your mind, help stimulate your body, help keep you in a sense of wonderment, and help keep you with exploring the world around you. And these adventures don't have to be, crossing the Atlantic on a cruise ship. They don't have to be super expensive, but they do need to be something that's out of the ordinary, something that has a little bit of risk to it, and something that's going to be able to stretch you and create memories for you. So, however you want to plan these adventures, and maybe it's with you as an individual, maybe it's with you and your spouse, whatever that is, make sure that you write down and you're planning out an adventure this year for you, and making sure that it fits some of this criteria that we've already talked about. It's something where you're going to need to be physically active, and that's going to depend on your abilities, of course. And sometimes that's going to be, hey, can I go walk 5 city blocks? Can I go do X? Can I do whatever? And make it so it's a little bit of a stretch for you. There's nothing wrong with that. If you're normally walking a couple of miles a day, maybe you're doing a walking tour of New York and you're going to be on your feet all day, and it's going to be a bit of a stretch, and maybe you're a little uncomfortable when that's over, and that's okay. You can go back to the hotel and you can kick your feet up and you can lay down for a little while and recover. That's part of the adventure. But you do want to push yourself a little bit. The other thing too that I want to get across is really defining what an adventure is. And I've looked up a bunch of definitions, and it all boils down to this, right? It's out of the ordinary. There's an element of risk to it. It's going to be something bold and something a little bit dangerous. Now, the dangerous part, you can choose how much danger you want to really, put into it, and you can define what dangerous is. If you're taking 3 or 4 grandchildren that are under the age of 5 somewhere on your own, that's an element of danger for sure. Because all of a sudden you've got all these young kids with you that you've got to juggle those balls and keep all those kids happy and keep them content and keep them involved with whatever the activity is. So maybe that's enough danger for you. The other part too is maybe with the older grandkids, you're going to go on a camping and backpacking trip over a long weekend, and there might be a little bit of rain to it. So the danger there is that you're not going to have the best time if you were completely rain-free and the weather was perfect. So however that element of danger is, it's up to you to decide what that is. But it does make up part of that adventure, right? It's part of the risk. It's part of, hey, things could go a little sideways. And you know what? That's okay. So here's some ideas and some things that you can do with grandchildren when they're younger. And what I mean by younger is, let's define that as 10 years and younger. Okay, I'm not going to tell you to take a 2-year-old and go do a walking city tour. That's not going to be appropriate. So it's up to you to figure out what's appropriate. But adventures with younger children, they have to be fun. And part of the adventure is going to be making sure that you're talking to the grandchildren in terms of, this is an adventure for us. And what I would also suggest is that you look for something that you can do either one-on-one, or maybe you and grandma can go do together with the grandchild, and that it becomes kind of a shared experience amongst you and the grandchildren. Leave the adult children at home or let them go do their own thing or whatever the situation is. You want this to be able to be a bonding experience with you and the grandchildren. So a few things that I've done and I've seen with young kids, and again, I'm defining this as 10 years and younger, is going to aquariums where they can touch a ray for the first time. They could touch a hermit crab, or they could touch a horseshoe crab for the first time. Something where they can do something that's really out of the ordinary, and for them, that's risky, right? That's sticking their fingers in with something that lives in the water. That has that element of danger to it and curiosity as well. So an aquarium can be a really great place to go and have an adventure. The other part too, and this one, hey folks, completely honest, this is the one that gets my my blood pumping, is taking them to an air show. A young boy, young girl going to an air show that can walk into the belly of a B-52 if that's on display and see how huge that bomb bay is, or going up and seeing a P-47 and how that huge radial engine really comes to life and starts coughing and the sounds around that can be quite an adventure. Also, being able just to touch these things and being able to see them is going to be something that's shared, right? Petting zoos are another great adventure that you can take young kids onto, and where they can touch goats and sheep, and they can touch different animals. They can see the little ducklings. They can see little chicks. Whatever's there, it's something where they can interact with, and they can see these things. And if there's a little bit of a hiking trail and walking around, so much the better. Sometimes these petting zoos are also around carnivals and around different kind of events where it's attached onto something, so that it's not just taking them to the petting zoo, but it's also going to the carnival, and it's also walking around, and it's people watching, and it's seeing different things. It's letting them experience some of those, and I'm sticking with carnivals, letting them stick with some of those carnival activities that are geared for little kids. Another great one is going to be those drive-through zoos. And what I mean by this is these are the ones where you can go and you can rent a vehicle. Typically, this thing is not necessarily roadworthy, but it's something that you can rent and you can drive through, and you're seeing water buffalo, and you're seeing giraffes, and you're seeing all these different animals that may come up to the car, and you can feed them. For little kids, actually seeing a giraffe up close and seeing that big head come through a window looking for food is something that they're definitely going to remember. And then the last thing I'm going to talk about here is going to be doing a simple walk and a simple hike. This could be something where with the young kids, you actually put a little day pack on them. Maybe it's their school bag, but you fill it up and you put their water bottle inside of it, and you put their snack in their bag, and you put some of the things. Maybe it's even creating a small little first aid kit with them that's got some, a couple of Band-Aids, and it's got a couple of things with it. And you start teaching them early about the importance of having a first aid kit with them when they go on these adventures, right? But it's the fact that they're carrying their load. They're carrying their supplies. They're out there with Grandpa, and they've got their pack on them just the same as Grandpa's got his pack on them. And you can do this either at a state park, a national park, a local park, whatever it is. You can take them out there and do this trip with them, and they're going to have a blast. And make sure you take lots of pictures. And this is a great opportunity with everything I'm talking about, is to create a little photo album, create a little PowerPoint slide deck, whatever it is, to capture the adventure that you're on, so that they have that memory with them. And then also find little things that they can have, that they can put in their sock drawer, let's say, that's going to remind them of this adventure that you're taking them on. For middle-aged, and I'm chuckling, middle-aged grandkids, and I'm going to define this as being like 10 to 14 years old. You can definitely do longer hikes with them. You can do some camping trips. I've seen people do some scuba lessons with some simple scuba dives with children at this age. My wife and I just came back from a folk art school where they teach all sorts of activities. They teach all sorts of skills. My wife, Karen, she went through the blacksmithing course, the introduction to blacksmithing, but they've got photography, they've got cooking, they've got quilt making, they've got basketry, they've got woodworking, they've got all sorts of activities, and they definitely have an intergenerational week, as well as just being able to sign up younger students to go through this. So if you've got somebody, one of your grandchildren that is interested in learning wood carving, this would be a great weekend or week-long activity that you and your grandchildren could go do together. And this falls in line with the idea of an adventure because it's out of the ordinary. It's bold. There's a little danger if you're doing wood carving. I mean, I taught wood carving merit badge in Scouts, and we nicknamed it finger carving because everybody in there was nicking up their thumbs pretty good. And so find out if there's a folk art school around you that's teaching some of these old skills, and those grandkids may really love that. Maybe a short road trip. Maybe you want to take them up to Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and go see the Little League World Series, or go up there and just see the Little League Museum and the activities around Williamsport. And that's probably a 3 or 4 hour drive for you. There's something probably similar within that time frame that you could go do, and maybe even making it an overnight. You don't have to stay in a luxury hotel, but a Hampton Inn, a Holiday Express, Econo Lodge, whatever it is, that could do it. And that's something that's definitely out of the ordinary. There's a little bit of risk. What if the car breaks down and you got to deal with that? Maybe danger, it's not so dangerous, and that's fine too. But it's getting out, it's going somewhere, it's doing something else. Think about taking them soaring. And what I mean by this is those gliders, those big gliders. If you're in an area that has that, or look it up, that would be an adventure for the kids to go and do with you, is to take them somewhere where you can go and get them a ride in a glider. I mean, I still remember the time. Now, this was my father taking us, but we were in upstate New York, and we saw gliders flying around overhead, and we followed it back to the airport, and we all had our turns taking a ride in a glider. And I still remember that. And I was probably about 8 or 9 years old when that happened. Biplane rides are a great one too, and you can find those at some of the local airports around. And think about skiing and just some travel that you might do. Maybe go to the next big city next to you. You could jump on a bus and take that bus. I mean, just taking a bus to the next town is going to be an adventure for somebody that's never done that before. It's teaching them how to navigate through that kind of travel. So there's a lot that you could do with those middle-aged. Again, I'm defining that as 10 to 14. Now, with the older kids, one of the things that I loved to do when I was working in Scouts was do a wilderness survival overnight. And again, we're talking older kids. These are 14 plus, and you can make a game out of it. Hey, we're going to go out. We're going to this park, and whatever you have in your backpack is going to be what you have to make it through the night. Definitely pick out a time of year where the weather's going to be appropriate for the level of experience that you have. Let them know that you're going to bring along a hamburger patty, and we're going to have to figure out how to cook that up. But the idea is you tell them, hey, we're going out for an overnight. You've got to pack your pack. They're restricted to the size of the pack. So you could make it a school backpack size pack, or you could make it a little bit bigger if you want to give them, more opportunity for some creature comforts, and hike in somewhere, set up camp overnight. And you know what? If you don't end up sleeping a wink overnight, that's fine. You can get up and walk back to the car, drive home, and take a big long nap afterwards. But they'll never forget that chance where they slept outside with just the clothes on their back and a small amount of supplies. And if you want to get really hardcore with it, and maybe you've done it a few times, give them the opportunity to wear a set of pants with cargo pockets on it, and you make the restriction just whatever you have in your cargo pockets. I mean, you might be able to surprise these young kids with what you're able to do with a set of cord and a small bit of plastic sheeting that you can stuff into your cargo pockets, and you can make yourself a nice shelter while they're still struggling to figure out what they're going to do. So gives Grandpa an opportunity to kind of brag a little bit about their bushcraft skills. And that takes me into the next part. Think about bushcraft class. And this is definitely something that can be fun. It can teach fire building basics. It can teach plant identification. It can teach some basic wilderness survival skills. Whatever it is, there's probably a bushcraft class that's close to where you live or where the grandkids live, that on one-year visits to see them or them to see you, you could take them out and do that craft, that class, and then be able to incorporate that into your wilderness survival overnighter. The other thing that you can do is get into a longer road trip. You know, if you live in a part of the country, maybe you pile into the car with the grandkids and you drive to a beach and they see the ocean, and you spend a day or so at the ocean, and then you turn around and come back. Maybe it's an opportunity, if they have their learner's permit, you let them do most of the driving. And you guys can talk, and you can really understand and bond with each other during that time. You know, don't be afraid to look into flying classes. There's all sorts of introduction to flying. And again, flying throughout all of this stuff in airplanes is definitely something that gets, you know, my motor running. So I'm thinking in terms of that, but an intro to flying class, right? Where they can go with an instructor. The instructor takes the plane up, and then it gives it to the grandchild to do some flying around under supervision. And then of course the instructor lands the plane, but it introduces them to that. And then also same thing with sailing. You could do an introduction to sailing class. And then you can also do, and this is another one, so I'm definitely one of these that I'm already thinking about, a rafting trip. You know, maybe it's on the Salmon River. Maybe it's out on the Colorado River. Maybe it's, you know, just a full day at a local river where it's something out of the ordinary. There's an element of danger where somebody could get bounced out of the boat and take a swim until they get pulled back into the boat. And then, you know, expand the travel horizons. Maybe if you have got the funds, maybe you take them somewhere where they've never been. If you're growing up in the southeast of the United States, go to Seattle. You know, fly a completely different area, or drive, or take the bus, whatever it is. Go and expand that range of travel with the grandchildren. All these things are meant to create a closer bond for you, and they're meant to be able to create memories that you're going to have with your grandchildren and that they're going to have with you. And remember, all of these things too are ideas that you can do with them at different stages of their lives and what makes sense for you. You don't have to break the bank on any of these. What this list has been intended to do is to spark that curiosity of, what can I do this year? What kind of adventure can I plan for them? And believe me, you don't have to plan an adventure every single time you go and see the grandchildren or every single time they come see you. An adventure could be just a once a year type activity. And some of these things, as kids get older, are just natural activities that they do with their grandparents. So if you're planning an adventure, start that talk early with the grandkids. Start using adventure in your communication with them. whether it's a postcard, a letter, a video chat, a phone call, whatever that is. If you have an idea for what you want to do for the adventure in 2023, start that communication early and often in describing this thing as an adventure, and get it up and get it moving to the forefront of their minds. Please remember too that even though I've been saying grandchildren, I definitely mean granddaughters as well as grandsons in all of this, because one of the biggest things that has really struck me is when I'm talking with adult grandchildren that are women, one of the things that they really talk about is how grandpa didn't treat them any different. That was a huge part of the conversation that I've had with them. So you can definitely go back and listen to past episodes where I've interviewed women about their grandfathers, and you're going to hear that same theme pop up over and over again. Grandpa didn't treat me any different from the boys. Now, we're all going to treat grandchildren differently based upon their interests, based upon their level of ability. So understand you can't treat everybody the same, but you want to be able to include adventures with your grandsons and granddaughters for sure. As we wrap up this conversation, I really hope this gave you some ideas about what you can do for an adventure with your grandchild this year. And I hope you, if you haven't already started planning an adventure, that this really gets you going and starts getting the creative juices flowing so that you can figure out what's the adventure that we're doing with the grandkids. Now, it's great if you could do this all one-on-one, but maybe sometimes you're going to have to take a number of the grandkids with you. And that's okay, because they also have that shared experience with either their siblings or with their cousins, and maybe a friend that goes out with them on some of these adventures. So that's up to you about how the dynamic works. But I want you to remember, part of why we want to do adventures with grandkids is to introduce them to new interests, new groups, new perspectives, so that they get a wide variety of understanding what the world has to offer them, and to spark those interests in them that they may have had, but they haven't had the opportunity to really experience yet. So adventures are important for grandkids. Adventures are important for you. And I hope this has really helped you out. I look forward to continuing our conversation, our one-on-one with you in March. I've got some great conversations coming up all through the month of March, but I am looking forward to having a chance to speak with you again soon. So, hey, until next time, remember to stay cool. Thank you for listening to the Cool Grandpa Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, please do me a favor and share it with a friend. That's the best way you can help us to expand our community, as well as get the news out about how valuable grandpas are in the lives of those kids. If you'd like to leave me a comment or shoot me a potential topic for this podcast, please go to www.cool-grandpa.us. Look for the comments tab, fill it out, hit submit. It's as easy as that. Until next time, remember to stay cool.